Welcome to the Sales Whisperer Podcast, session 28. What's your bright idea? Welcome, everybody, to the 28th edition of the Sales Whisperer Podcast. I'm recording this on Monday, November 25th, 2013. Thanksgiving is right around the corner. My baby sister's coming out from San Clemente. She's cooking up a Cajun turkey, so it's going to be a good week. This is going to be a good podcast. Interviewed a new good friend of mine by the name of Trent Deersmid. We met through the Infusionsoft community. He has an interesting story, which you are about to hear, but in a nutshell, we are brothers from another mother. He's 43 like me, grew up through the ranks of cold calling. Also in the Air Force, also spent time in financial services. It was kind of eerie how much we had in common. Got into high tech, built his own business, a 7-figure business in high tech. Then he sold that business, went into semi-retirement, and met his wife. They are now having a baby, just like my wife and I. And they are jumping with both feet into digital marketing and teaching others how to do what he did. So I think this is a great interview. I hope you appreciate the advice he gives, and the notes are on thesaleswhisperer.com/session 28. Without further ado, Mr. Trent Deersmid. Trent, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Wes. It's a pleasure to be here.
Just like I told you. So we have today... So it's Trent Deersmid, kind of like Dear John, but Deersmid. But it's not spelled like D-E-A-R. So people are totally confused, which is why you have brightideas.co, eh?
Correct.
But not an A at the end, it's just .co. But you're from Canada, eh? So I got to say A. So you and I, so we met online, not online dating, but we met through the Infusionsoft community group. And then we just met a couple weeks ago at InfusionCon.
Yep.
And we are brothers from another mother.
Pretty much.
Right? Both 43 years old. Our hot wives are pregnant again. Spent some time in the Air Force. You were in Canada. I was in U.S. of A. Spent time as financial advisors early on. And now here we are at Infusionsoft. But you had a great history, great entrepreneurial background. I wanted to have you on. Would you mind spending a couple of minutes, let folks kind of know a little bit of your background, and then we'll dive into some of the nitty-gritty on how you built your business and what you're doing now and what you see in the future?
Sure. So I got my start in sales, selling photocopiers, and then went on to spend a fair amount of time as a financial advisor. And back then, I was a cold calling machine.
Yep.
I would dial the phone 120 times a day, and I'd make a lot of money doing it because it really worked.
And this was when? Mid-90s?
Yeah.
Okay.
I started in, like early, pretty much the whole 90s. I was the cold call guy in the 90s. And then in 2001, I decided to finally go out on my own and start my own business. And I started a company that sold technology services to small businesses. So we were essentially their virtual IT department. And got started with, next to no money in the bank, and picked up the phone and we cold called our way to, I think it was about $800,000 a year in sales. And then, referrals sort of took over, and that took us up to about $2 million a year in sales. And the real big lesson that I learned in that business was to build a business that charged customers monthly for a service that they consumed on an ongoing basis.
Right.
So much like the marketing business that we're both in today, marketing is an ongoing requirement, because I've never met a company that said, we have enough customers, we don't want any more.
Right.
IT was much the same. Only it was the opposite. Computers are always breaking down. There's maintenance, patches, monitoring, security, backups, all this stuff that people would pay an IT guy for. So they paid us a fee. And it was good for them because it was less expensive and we had redundancy and blah, 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 blah. So that's and that business was ranked as one of the Profit 100 fastest growing companies in Canada for a couple of years in a row, right up to when I sold it in 2008. And I sold it One, because my co-founder and I had a big, we just kind of had a squabble. We didn't want to go in different directions. He didn't ever want to sell it. I wanted to sell it. But I also kind of hit a wall, to be honest with you, because I didn't really know anything about digital marketing like I do now back then. And a lot of the tools that we use now weren't so easy to use or didn't exist back then. And so after I took a bit of time off to enjoy the fruits of my labor and, learn how to surf and all the things that you could do in your midlife mini retirement crisis, I started, I met a gal surfing and she was online and making money online. And so I started blogging, and it took me a good while to sort of find out what I wanted to be when I grew up in version 2 of my entrepreneurial journey. And that's where I'm at now.
So those are some big swings. You go from selling copiers to slinging stocks to starting your own company in IT. So maybe that's why we get along, right? Because we're like psychotic. I mean, those have nothing in common.
No.
I sold stocks, then I sold mobile homes, and I got into technology. And in 2008, I found Infusionsoft.
Yeah.
So walk people through those transitions. How did you come to enter these vastly different career fields?
I think aside from maybe having some short circuits in my brain that causes.
Yeah. I think too much football for me. I don't know. Maybe dirt bike
bikes.
accidents for you.
Yeah, dirt bike accident. I hit my head on the ground too many times. For some reason, I only am satisfied if the challenge that is before me is incredibly difficult.
Right.
And, when you're a guy who's, in my case, I think I was 19 years old when I started selling photocopiers, and I'd never sold anything. And the training was more like, here's your territory, goodbye.
Yep.
Which door should I knock on? All of them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so I just did that. And then same thing when I got into the stock business. I worked for one of the big banks in Canada. They owned a huge brokerage firm. And they sent you off to Toronto for 2 weeks, and the training was all about, how to enter tickets and trade bonds and stocks. But none of it was about how to get customers.
Right.
And I remember I come back to my office, and the sales manager walks me over to my desk. He drops the phone on my desk, and he says, start dialing. And he walked away. That was the training. So why I think I grew up in a very poor family. We were on welfare. We lived in I don't know if I can, crappy apartment that with beat up furniture. And I saw my parents fight a lot. There was a lot of domestic issues that all revolved around a lack of money.
Yep.
And so somewhere in my brain, I connected that poverty equals violence.
Mm-hmm.
And I abhor violence. I'm not like that at all, thankfully. And so I just had a fire lit under me that I cannot be poor no matter what. And because I didn't go to college, I don't have a degree. For me, the way to wealth was to be a salesman, because nothing happens till you make a sale, and salespeople are always the highest paid in any company. And so I was a salesman to the point of, and even when I went into my own business, I was still really just a salesman. That technology company, I didn't know how to do anything that we sold. Nothing. I don't know how to install a server or do any of that stuff, but I knew how to talk to people, and I knew how to make cold calls. I knew how to get meetings and ask questions and qualify and overcome objections, and I knew how to get the order.
Right.
And so while my career path involved different products per se, photocopiers, stocks, IT services, the thing that was in common all the time was that it required me to be a rainmaker.
Yep. Amen. That's weird, man. That's I had a similar background. I haven't really talked about this, but my parents got divorced. They weren't violent, but they got divorced. And then, usually you run out of money when you get divorced. And that happened. I was living in an apartment with my dad. We had some loaned furniture. At first we had no furniture. Had a mattress on the floor. And, then a loaned, borrowed old ratty couch. Like, I wouldn't have friends over because I was embarrassed to have them in. And my dad was really stretching. He sent me to a private Catholic school because he wanted me to get that education. He took loans. So I'm going to school with kids driving. They're driving to school in BMWs, and I got this old loaner Honda Prelude, But I think it makes you hungry, right?
Yep, it does. It definitely does. I've watched my dad file for bankruptcy twice.
Oh man!
And I thought I don't ever want to have any part of that.
Yep. But they make that for a reason. Sometimes, hey, Donald Trump, at least in his businesses, declared it. We can go off on a whole tangent on what I've seen with real estate and whatever, but it's there for a reason. But yeah, it's good if you can avoid it.
It is indeed.
So I like what you talked about because I grew up as well, cold calling. We had a little more training in our stock and bond training. We did go through cold calling, but man, it was rough. And it always felt unnatural, at least in the calling consumers, because I don't know if you were doing that, but I mean, I was calling people at home saying, hey, you want to buy some stock, right? And when I was in technology, though, calling on big business, I sold to Google and Verizon and Sprint. I had no problem calling those guys.
Yeah, I never ever called people at home for anything I've ever sold because I hang up on people when they call me at home. I don't even listen. I just hang up, and I always have. But when you're at business and I'm calling you to do business, that's an appropriate phone call. Right,
and that's, and I'm still torn because you hear these guys, cold calling is dead, cold calling never works, yada, yada. And it's like, and I don't have to do it anymore, and I haven't done it in years. But for somebody just starting out, and especially in business to business, it's great to build referrals and testimonials and have your SEO and SEM and PPC, all that working, but that takes time and it takes money, right? Whereas the phone is sitting there, you can call anybody at any time, and it may not be efficient, but if you know what you're doing, you can get an appointment today.
Yeah, it's definitely not efficient, but you're right. You can. I mean, we did in the first month of that business, we did $10,000 or $12,000 in revenue. And, we didn't spend any money on marketing, and all we did was just me and my co-founders sit in the apartment and one phone each, and we just made calls.
Right.
Anyone can do that. And that's why I am such a huge proponent of, especially when you're young and you have, you don't have a mortgage and you don't have a family to support. You can literally alter the path of the rest of your life if you're willing to do something that most people, to be honest with you, are just too chicken shit to do.
Mm-hmm. And I think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you can be a great marketer until you become a great salesman.
I would agree, because you need to have conversations with people. Like I'm in a bunch of different businesses now. One of them is a marketing agency. Two of them are software companies. And then there's the Bright Ideas blog. And I learn for the marketing agency, we still go out and do meetings with potential joint venture partners, and of course with their customers when they bring us in. And those conversations, which are very much a sales framework, because I always go in and I follow what I was trained to do early on, and that's ask questions to uncover need, qualify, ask if it's important, talk about timeline, talk about budget. But I always learn so much from those conversations that I am then able to use in my copywriting, in my sales videos, in the psychology of the marketing funnels that I create. And I don't think I would be nearly as good of a marketer. Excuse me, and I'm just fighting a little cold here, so I apologize. I had to keep clearing my throat. But I don't think I'd be nearly as good of a marketer if I hadn't spent all those years in the trenches first.
Right. Well, how can people today get that type of trench warfare experience? I mean, what can a business owner that's struggling, what can they do to affordably and quickly turn things around to start growing their sales?
Well, I would suppose that depends on the business they're in, but I can't see. I mean, any business who's B2B, all my experience is B2B, so I'm not going to talk about B2C. But no matter what business that you're in, you're selling to other people on the other end of a phone. And if you were to do, I mean, there's more eloquent ways to do it now. Like, for example, Twitter, if you don't want to pick up the phone, I still think that you can do a lot of outbound with social media, Twitter and email, which is part of social media, but Twitter and email in particular. I have built a wonderful network of people. And a lot of times that conversation just started off with Twitter. You can find someone who you think would be a good customer or maybe a good joint venture partner, which is an indirect customer, and follow them on Twitter. Start retweeting their stuff. Start commenting on their posts. Start sharing their posts with your tribe. Inside of a week, that person's going to know who you are. And so when you do send the quote-unquote cold email, which isn't really cold anymore, the chances of you getting a reply are exponentially higher than they would be if you had just sent the email and did nothing of the other parts. And the dirty little secret about this, now that we live in the world of virtual assistants that work for $3 and $4 an hour in places like the Philippines, is the legwork beforehand, the following them on Twitter, the retweeting their stuff, making an intelligent comment on their blog. Honestly, Wes, I don't do that stuff myself. I have a VA do it for me for $3.50 an hour. But then those personal emails, I do those.
Right.
But I warm them up, for pennies, really.
So all that time stroking my ego, that was some woman in the Philippines. Man, this interview is over. All right. So that's fantastic. Are you using other platforms as well, or are you focusing on Twitter to begin the dialogue? Because I know in your blog you don't want to get into that, but are you using Facebook? Are you using LinkedIn?
Yeah, I'm kind of everywhere. I really am. I mean, I make a lot of videos. I use LinkedIn a lot. I'm a member of a lot of groups. There's definitely people who are more proficient with LinkedIn than me. There's people who are more proficient in videos with me. But I think that if you are wanting to do social media, I think you need to touch people in a variety of ways. Twitter is great because it's super fast. But if, for example, you had made a video, so let's go back to that cold/warm email that you're going to send. Well, what if you sent them to a video that you'd made first? That's a very scalable way of giving people personal exposure to you, because that video could be a minute or 2 minutes long, and it could be you simply introducing yourself and saying, this is my thing. This is what I'm really, really good at. And you're watching this email now because you're someone that I'd like to know, and I'm going to look for an email from me within the next 48 hours. Something, and you could tweet that out to somebody. You could say, look for an email from me within the next 6 hours. Mm-hmm. The point is most people, and I don't care how famous they are, because I've got a hold of some pretty well-known, when I say famous, I don't mean like Hollywood celebrities, but within the marketing and business space, when you tweet at someone, I almost always get a reply. So I don't think it's hard to get a hold of people. So video is another tool that I'm using a bunch. Podcasts like this, I think, are also very, very valuable from an engagement perspective, because when people are listening to you and I talk right now, all three of them.
My mom's now signed up. I think I've got 4.
Okay, we're up to 4? All right. But when they hear us talk and laugh and joke and the tone of our voices, that's so much of a richer experience than just reading someone's text. And some of the people, they've already stopped listening to this because they're like, nah, these guys aren't for me. Well, they're never going to be our customer, and that's okay because they'll go do business with somebody else. But there are other people who are still listening thinking, Wes and Trent are funny guys. I have an affinity for them. And those people, assuming they had a need for something that we sold and we made an offer in some piece of our content somewhere, those people will have a much higher propensity to doing business with us. So this type of thing is a very, very scalable way. The thing, my wife and I, we were talking about this on the weekend as we were doing our planning meeting for this week. The one downside of cold calling versus creating content, and I think that a lot of people don't understand this, is content is an asset. It has a shelf life. And especially if you make it evergreen, it can actually have quite a long shelf life. Whereas at the end of a day of cold calling, if you didn't make any results at all, you didn't create an asset to show for that. Those calls kind of just evaporate into thin air. So I think that whereas what I used to do was just doing cold calls because I didn't know any better, I would encourage people that are listening to this to, especially if they're early on, you should be doing outbound. but it doesn't need to be just the phone. And the content that you create, you should think about a strategy so that you're creating content that supports the outbound outreach that you're doing and speaks to the niche market and buyer persona that you're going after.
Right.
I don't even know if you asked me a question about that. I sort of rambled on there, but sorry.
Yeah, I forgot. I think I asked that question like 38 minutes ago. I got up and mowed the lawn. I mean, changed the baby's diaper. No, I love that. The content is an asset, and by all means, I'm redoing my site right now. We're about to relaunch it, and it has been an ordeal because it's almost 200 pages and 450 blog posts. So I'm big on content, but you and I both got our start on calling. And again, I don't. If you're a beginner, if you're new in business, listening to this, if you're struggling in sales, I would encourage you to pick up the phone. If nothing else, you're going to get fast feedback on what's working and what isn't. You're going to hear the objections. Once you get the same objection a few times, write it down, figure out how to overcome it. That becomes your content, right? That can become a direct mail piece. That can become a blog post. That can become a video that you can make. Post it on YouTube. Make it with your iPhone and put it out there. And then tweet that out or find somebody with that. But sitting around, the most sophisticated heat-seeking missile, on the planet, must be launched, before it can begin towards the target. And then it's constantly adjusting its path based on wind and whatever, atmosphere and weather, and if the target's moving. But it's got to launch. And I just see too many people struggle because they don't launch.
I made a video on YouTube a couple of years ago. And I was just learning about YouTube marketing. And so the guy I was learning from said, pick a keyword. So at the time, my keyword that I picked was how to start a business with no money. And if you go into YouTube and you type that in, my video is #1 to this day.
How to start what is it?
How to start a business with no money.
All right, I'm going to do it. I'm doing it.
And it's not me pimping out some, goofball hack or shortcut to trick SEO or any of that crap. It's actually a mindset that I talk about in that video. To this day,
Shazam, there you are, 336,000 views.
Yeah, and it goes up by about 2,000 views every day.
It's going to go up by 7 million after this podcast.
And when I didn't do anything to make that video rank in YouTube, I didn't throw any backlinks at it or anything. I just made a video that was the best that I knew how at the time, and it was just me talking in front of a whiteboard, which anybody can do. And I simply explained that someone had given me advice a long time ago, and the advice was this: the best way to succeed in business is to be in business. And I didn't get it at the time, but I know you already get it, because here's what happens. And in the video, I talk about this with dots. I use a metaphor for dots. So when you're starting off and you haven't talked to anybody, you think, I'm going to sell green dots. And then you make a bunch of calls trying to sell green dots, and you realize nobody really wants to buy any green dots. But some guy that you talk to says, I got this other problem, and if you could make a red dot to solve that problem, then I'd buy it.
Sure.
So you go make a red dot, and he buys some, and you sell a few more, but you're not really killing it yet. And then some guy says, well, if you could make me a blue dot, he says, I'd buy a whole truckload of those things. So then, and you wouldn't have ever discovered blue dots if you didn't know about red dots, and you never would have known about red dots if you weren't trying to sell green dots.
Right.
So my point is the conversations that happen as a result of being in business, which is basically trying to sell your stuff, they will take you to the gold. But if you don't ever start, you will be one of those guys who reads tons and tons of books, listens to tons and tons of podcasts, reads a truckload of posts because he's waiting for the perfect idea. You will never succeed.
Right. Got to launch, baby. Yeah,
you do.
You're ahead
version 1's better than version none, man.
You're ahead of Robert Kiyosaki. You're ahead of Marie Forleo. So that's some good street cred there. Because you're right. You got to start. People ask me, how do I sell so much Infusionsoft? And it's like, because I sell it. I use it just enough to accomplish my goal, and I go sell. instead of busting open the engine and taking the thing apart to see how it all works. Like, I'm a salesman, but like you, selling your IT stuff. Like, I don't know. I've never rebooted a server, re-imaged a server. You just sold it.
And that's a good point that you bring us back to that, because the vast majority of IT companies are started by the guys that know how to do the work, and the vast majority of IT companies end up being one or two or maybe three people, and they're all technical, and they're only growing on referral, and they're all out what I call trunk slammers, screwdrivers and hammers, and they're driving around and charging hourly fees. They don't know nothing about marketing at all, and they get this little business, and they more or less have a job.
Yep.
Only their job has risk, because if they don't have any customers, they don't get any income, they don't get any benefits. They'd be better off to just stay working for somebody else, because that's a crappy business to own. You really need to be a sales and marketing focused individual if you are going to be successful, because you can hire for all the other stuff.
Right. So how did you start brightideas.co?
I registered the domain name, and I started writing, and I started interviewing people. I've interviewed on the show now, I think, close to 90 different entrepreneurs. So that's 90 plus hours of free consulting time for yours truly. I learned a lot from the people who'd been on my show. I kept implementing. I kept learning. I kept implementing. I made lots of mistakes. I still do. And then I started, and for the first, I don't think it was even till June that we actually even had anything for sale. So we barely made almost no money in the beginning. And then we came out with our first product, and we did, I think, like 40 grand worth of sales in a week. And that got us some more recognition and some more people to talk to. And we came up with some more products, and it just iterate. And it is far from perfect at this point in time, but it keeps getting better all the time. Traffic keeps going up. My list is growing faster than ever. I've been able to launch, my mastermind group. I wrote a book. I've got courses that teach B2B lead generation. I've got software products. I own half of two software as a service companies now, one that's almost in beta, one that's just early in its revenue. None of that stuff wouldn't have happened if I didn't register brightideas.co and publish that first blog post, which in hindsight, I think my first interview was a guy by the name of Mike Miklowitz, who wrote a book called The Pumpkin Plan. Really, really good. He was in our business as well, technology. Really good book, by the way.
The Pumpkin Plan?
Yeah.
All right.
And in hindsight, could I have succeeded faster? Oh, hell yeah, absolutely. Because, I got skid marks all over me. I like to say that I'm the guy that never gets it right the first time, but I will eventually figure it out. And so I try and save people all the errors by, if they come read the blog, and they're going to learn, they're going to get the shortcut that I wish I would have had.
So how long, when did you register? And then you said in June of this year, 2013, you launched that first product. So how long was that?
The blog pretty much started at the beginning of 2013. I think we had like a couple of posts up in the fall of 12, but nothing meaningful.
So then what was that first product?
It was a product that taught B2B lead generation.
Okay.
It's called the Best Buyer Formula. It's still a product that's for sale now. And I just basically took all that I had learned in the decade before about how to get my foot in the door, and I wrote about it, and I recorded a whole bunch of videos, and I just tried to cover every detail that I could, and put it all into a membership site, and people bought. And then I also created a WordPress plugin. I'd never built any software before. I created a WordPress plugin that cost me about $1,200 to have a developer create, and that accounted for half of the $40,000 in sales, was that little piece of software.
Oh, wow.
And that's kind of what I'd always wanted to be in the software business, because when people, the thing with training is great. You can make good money with training products, but people don't have to use it. They can buy it, and then it sits on their hard drive, and that's unfortunate when that happens. But with software, if it becomes part of their daily operations, if they become dependent on that tool, like you and I are dependent upon Infusionsoft, are you ever going to stop paying?
Right.
Nope, never.
So, $40,000 in a week. And then what did you do? Did you keep promoting that? Are you shifting gears now? You mentioned a mastermind group. You mentioned a book. I mean, how did you get those started?
So it all comes from having a list. Like when, it's so important with no matter what business you're in, you got to build a list. And I'm talking about a list of people's name and email address. I couldn't do anything that I do without my list. The list is your ATM machine. The bigger the list, the more dollar bills it can put out. So I interviewed a lot of people and ended up, somebody that had been on my show when I moved here to Boise, Idaho, said, you got to meet this guy named Nathan Barry in Boise. So Nathan and I had coffee. He'd mentioned he'd done very well launching a few of his own books, self-publishing, made a lot of money. And so I had been toying with the idea of writing a book for a while, but I thought, all right, enough messing around. It's time to start. And so I immersed myself. I asked him a bunch of questions, and then I sort of immersed myself. In about 10 days, I had the book written. So I just decided that I wanted to do that for a couple of reasons. One, and we hadn't even launched our marketing agency yet. We've got an agency called Groove Digital Marketing, which my wife pretty much runs. But I launched the book because I wanted the last product launch had gone so well for us. I wanted another high-quality product to launch. And it's not just a book. I mean, I use this tiered pricing approach. So there's the book plus a whole bunch of videos, which you're going to be one of them. And then the book plus the videos plus a bunch of resources.
Do I have to shower for that video?
Maybe.
All right.
But much like when I launched my first course, if I hadn't have included the upsell for the software, my revenue would have been half.
Right.
So I thought to myself, and I learned this from Nathan, I thought I've got to have 3 tiers of pricing that people can choose from. So I wanted another high-quality product. Because the one thing that had happened, and I'd be remiss if I didn't cover this, when I launched that product in June, I had been giving stuff away for months and months and months. But I got 1,500 new customers in a week. And these people began their relationship with me with their credit card. And the amount of testimonials and thank you emails that I received by charging people for this body of information kind of knocked my socks off, to be honest with you, because it was far more. Much of these interviews that I'd done up to that point, I could probably sell those because they're so good. I've got like really amazing interviews. But when people don't pay for stuff, they don't value it as much. They don't tend to consume it because it's free. So that was a huge aha. And so I knew I was going to keep giving away a bunch of stuff as I have been. And I know you do the same, but I wanted another product to launch that would give me another spike, and then I could evergreen it into my funnel. Because what I'm trying to build is for the Bright Ideas portion of my business is a funnel that does such a good job of monetizing the people that go into the top of it that I can drive paid traffic into it using Facebook and other mediums, right, and get a return on my investment, because you can grow a lot faster if you can pay more to acquire a customer. And so you need products in your funnel. So I knew I needed to create more of my own products. So that was the reason for the book. The mastermind was that I'd had, again, from my list and my tribe and my interactions with them, I thought to myself, I'd been a big mastermind guy before when I was running my IT company. I used to spend about $20,000 a year to be in 2 different masterminds. And we would get together 4 times per year physically in a location, and we would compare notes over 3 days on, like everything under the sun. And the whole goal, of course, for everyone was we were trying to grow our businesses, and we wanted to share ideas with other people who were doing the same thing as us. And so Bright Ideas, I wanted to formalize the mastermind because I charge $180 a month for that's called the Mastermind Elite. You can get to it at brightideas.co/mastermind. And it kind of got started after this guy named Mike Worley wrote me an email. And Mike listened to every single one of my podcasts, every one of them. And he had a 2.5 or 2 hour commute every day. He'd just gotten married, just had a kid, and he finally decided to strike it out on his own and start a marketing agency, which is what I encourage my tribe to do. I have a tribe made up of people who don't yet have a business. I think they should become marketing consultants. And then the other people are already marketing consultants or agencies, and I try to help them grow. Anyway, Mike, he did $55,000 in his first 90 days. And he wrote me this really nice thank you email. And I wrote him back and I said, Mike, I want to start a mastermind. Would you like to be member number 1? And he said, yeah, that'd be really cool. So he signed up, and then I promoted it to my list. And another 10 guys have signed up since then. And we have these meetings, these long online meetings. They're generally 2 to 3 hours long. Top guy in the group the other day, he wrote me. So he's doing about $30,000 a month. His name's Jeff. And he wrote me, he says, Trent, the Bright Ideas Mastermind is the best thing that happened in my business this year. And he's doing $30,000 a month already. Because the idea sharing, when you put 10 people on a call and we're all doing the same business, it's a pretty wonderful experience. There's a lot of great ideas. We share templates and presentations and contracts and all sorts of stuff. And I bring guest speakers on, and we do these private discussions, and there's a Facebook group that's super active. I did it because I knew it would generate more cash, more recurring cash for me. I did it because it would help other people, and I did it because I knew I would learn too, and that's exactly what's happened.
How often do y'all meet?
Right now it's once a month, but this guy Jeff wrote me. He says, I think we should meet twice a month. And he says, I know that you might not have the time to facilitate another 3-hour meeting. So he says, one of the people in the group facilitate according to, your guidelines, have them facilitate the other meetings. So I wrote him back and I said, yeah, that'd be fine. So we may be going to 2 meetings a month.
And are you going to cap it like at 10, 11 people, 15 people?
There will be a cap, but I don't know what that cap is going to be yet. I'll know it when I get there.
Right.
Because on the meeting, everyone can talk.
Right.
But myself, and so each month the format kind of goes, I come up with a theme, we have a guest speaker, someone goes on the hot seat. So there's generally one person talking most of the time, okay. And then there's Q&A about that particular topic. So could you have 40 people on the call and make that a productive call? I think you could. Where the bottleneck might come into be is on the Q&A. If you just have too much Q and not enough A, and then you run out of time, that's when I'll know, like, hey, this is enough people.
Are you sharing things on a project management platform like Basecamp or something, so they can share documents and
Customer Hub? So the daily discussion happens in the Facebook group, and it's quite active. And then everything, all the downloads and the recording of the meeting and the notes and what everybody, because there's a big part of it about holding people accountable. So who committed to doing what before the next meeting, all of that goes on a page within Customer Hub, and then all the members have access to it.
Yeah, but they can't upload stuff there, right? I mean,
they can to Facebook.
Okay, so they'll share documents and whatever there.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Very nice. Well, it's coming up to the top of the hour. You still got time?
There's Yannick. No, hang on a second. I think Yannick is ready to go, so we're going to have to cut off.
Okay. As you confirm that, I want to remind everybody, you can check out Trent's website at brightideas.co. And if you look on his product page, doing that right now, you'll see it's landing-page-book. But you can get that from his website, brightideas.co. Go up to the very top, click on products. And your book is coming out early December, right?
December 10th. And just go to brightideas.co/book.
/book. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Very nice. Well, hey, tell Yannick hello. And I look forward to catch up with you tomorrow, right? When
all right.
I'll be on the hot seat. Get ready, baby.
All right, Wes. Thanks so much.
All right, man. Thanks, Trent.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So what did you think of that advice, huh? Trent and I have a common background. Now, depending on your age, if you're a little younger, maybe you haven't had to work the phones, caller ID and whatnot came out and made it a little tougher. But being able to sell face-to-face, eyeball to eyeball, or, even over the phone, right, in real time, not communicating through social media or email or some type of digital platform or media, makes you tough. It makes you strong. It gives you insight. It gives you empathy. It gives you understanding that is different from selling online. But those are the things you need to understand because it's still a sale. The process, the thinking is still the same. The emotions are the same in the minds of that prospect. And I know people make money off of saying cold calling is dead, and I don't cold call anymore. But, I do make follow-up calls if somebody hits my website and they request information, on Infusionsoft or one of my programs. I'll give them a quick call if I'm at my desk when I get the notice. So, sure, it's not a 100% cold call because they've been to my site. I know who they are, but they're not expecting my call. And so sometimes people are just curious, right? They're just browsing. Maybe they're busy right at that exact moment. So I still have to think on my feet, right? Pick up the tone, the background noises. Are they on a cell phone? Are there kids in the background? Are they boarding an airplane and they were just checking things out before they closed up their laptop? Little cues you got to pick up on, and I'm very sensitive to those little nuances because I sold face-to-face, because I had to get good at picking up the little subtleties so I can make the sale, because the smallest little thing does matter. People always say that dogs can sense fear. But you know what? Human beings are better than dogs, okay? We know when something just isn't quite right. Our intuition says something isn't quite right. We pick up on pauses. We pick up on fidgeting. We pick up on those verbal ums and ahs, things like that. And it tells us something's wrong. That salesperson is not confident and they're not comfortable for whatever reason, which means I'm not comfortable, so let me hold off, right? A confused mind says no. So embrace selling, okay? Do what you've got to do to get that experience. Is it easy? Is it pleasant? Nope. Will it make you tough and make you survive and help you succeed in the future? Yes. So now the choice is up to you. So thanks for listening. Hope you got a lot out of this. If you need some help in selling, check out my 30-day sales growth program, 30daysalesgrowth.com. It's 30 different lessons to help you get better at selling. If you are in management of salespeople, check out No More Sales Duds, nomoresalesduds.com. And with that program, you also get access to 30daysalesgrowth.com. So then you'll know how to sell people or how to hire salespeople. Then you'll know how to train them when you got them. So thanks for listening again. Please be sure to leave a comment on the website, leave a comment on iTunes, and share this with 3,000 of your closest friends. Good selling.